Many gay men deeply want love and connection, but a lot of us struggle to let in the love we want, even if we know we want it. So, what's going on here and what can we do about it? Let's discuss. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Better Gay Dating Podcast, the podcast about the art and science of building deeper connection as queer men. My name is Ed. I'm a dating relationship coach for gay and bi men. So, one of the biggest challenges in dating for gay and bi men isn't a practical issue. It's not about knowing how to use the apps or what to wear on a first date or how to communicate better. It's about the emotional avoidance or really emotional self-protection that's so common within our community. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe you've been there. You meet someone at a bar, you get chatting, and there's a strong chemistry there. So maybe you exchange numbers and say it'd be fun to hang out sometime, and maybe he says with a smile that he'd like that. Then you message him the next day, but he leaves you on red, or he responds to how was your night, but completely ignores the so when are you free part. In the space of 12 hours, he's gone from interested and engaged to distant and elusive with zero explanation. Or maybe you've been the other person here. Maybe you met someone you genuinely were interested in getting to know better, but the more you think about it, the more you convince yourself it wouldn't work, or it's not the right time, or he was nice but not really your type. So what is this about? Often it's that our instincts to armor up or self-protect have kicked in. Part of us was and probably still is interested in pursuing this connection, but part of us also knows that connection comes with risk, and this just feels too risky. We know we might get hurt, or he might turn out to be an asshole, or it might just turn into another disappointing connection that goes nowhere, so we withdraw, often without fully recognizing why. Because in truth, there's often a powerful but really limiting dynamic going on here. That often with gay and bi men, it's the connections that have the most potential to give us what we need that scare us the most. It's the people most able to offer us the love we want that we keep at a safe distance. In short, this happens because most queer people learn at some point that it's simply not always safe to be ourselves. We've all been in situations where we were rejected, dismissed, or even shamed for being who we are. So it's easy to internalize that who we are is wrong or shameful, or that the love we want is wrong or shameful, or just that we can't be fully ourselves around other people. And for a lot of us, that started happening at a time in our lives when we didn't have the tools or understanding to recognize what was happening and stand our ground or fight back. And as a result, that means that most queer people learned at some point that avoiding was the only way to stay safe. We learned to avoid conversations about our personal lives with our families. We learned to take a longer route home to avoid that group of straight teenagers in case they yelled at us. Or often we learned to be cagey and reserved around each other because rejection or ridicule from within our own community can hurt even more deeply. Something that's important here is that when I use the word safe, I'm not just talking about physical safety. It is, of course, about physical safety and learning to avoid anything that might put us in physical danger, but it's also about emotional safety, avoiding doing anything that might lead to rejection, shame, or exclusion. Because while you might think that emotional pain shouldn't hurt as much as physical pain, it can. Your brain processes rejection similarly to physical pain. So just like evolution made us feel physical pain to teach us the important lesson that if we stick our hands in a fire, we shouldn't do it again, we often feel the pain of rejection and take away the same message. We should avoid doing anything that might get us rejected in future. The central issue for queer men, though, is that we're often hurt or punished for very normal and human things, including trying to fulfill our very normal and human need for love and connection. This happens for two reasons that I often bring up on this podcast. One, because men in general, yep, including straight men, are often punished for expressing emotion, vulnerability, or love. We live in a culture that tells men to be strong and emotionless, to be self-reliant, and that doing anything else is feminine or weak. So in general, we exist in a culture where men learn to become cautious and reserved when it comes to expressing love or emotion. And then two, as I said, as queer men, our love is often also rejected and invalidated because of homophobia. Despite all the progress we've made as a society, there are still relatively few places it's completely safe for us to be ourselves. There are still few places where we can love openly without worrying what the consequences might be. Even in big, socially advanced cities, most of us still have to be careful about when or where we could hold a partner's hand. And even if in many places we can, having to constantly consider, am I safe, am I brave, can take a huge emotional toll. I feel like this is something we don't talk about even nearly enough. The assumption that because in a handful of countries at least we have equal rights to straight people, none of this is an issue anymore, but it doesn't work like that. In 2017, journalist Michael Hobbs wrote an article for the Huffington Post called Together Alone, The Epidemic of Gay Loneliness, about the disconnection that comes with being a queer man. And in the article, there's one section that always really stood out for me. I'm just going to read it to you. It says, "The trauma for gay men is the prolonged nature of it," says William Elder, a sexual trauma researcher and psychologist. If you experience one traumatic event, you have the kind of PTSD that can be resolved in 4 to 6 months of therapy. But if you experience years and years of small stresses, little things where you think, was that because of my sexuality? That can be even worse. Or, as Elder puts it, being in the closet is like having someone punch you lightly on the arm over and over. At first, it's annoying. After a while, it's infuriating. Eventually, it's all you can think about. And then the stress of dealing with it every day begins to build up in your body. So in short, a lot of why we push love away is not because of one major event that taught us that love can lead to pain or rejection. It's that we've experienced countless small events that taught us we can't be ourselves and love the way we do, or at least that it's not safe for us to do those things. And so ultimately, that's why we often shut down or avoid when presented with genuine, loving connections. It's why our initial genuine interest in someone can quickly fade. It's why a lot of us are performing or self-editing to hide the parts of ourselves that others could possibly dislike or reject. Because at some point, we learned we had to do this to be safe. But the final line of what I read to you is crucial too. The stress of dealing with all of these small stresses every day begins to build up in your body. Basically, this trauma, this stress response is stored in the body. Our nervous systems are changed by it. And in turn, that massively affects how we respond to related stresses in future. I'm not going to go into every detail of this in this episode, but this isn't just like a woo or spiritual thing. It's biological. Our nervous systems exist to keep us safe. They're designed to be activated when we feel threatened or overwhelmed so that we remove ourselves from danger. They help stop our prehistoric ancestors from running off cliffs, being eaten by tigers, all of that stuff. But what this means for us today is that by living in a world where we aren't fully safe all the time, most gay and bi men have developed nervous systems that are primed to expect rejection, disappointment, or danger. And so we often subconsciously identify it even when it's not there, or when the actual risk of rejection or disappointment is small and manageable. So this is often a factor when someone says they're looking for love and they express direct and genuine interest in you, but then it feels like something suddenly changed and maybe even they don't know what it was. It could be that their natural human instinct to want to connect with others was what you saw first, but then the nervous system response, this might not be safe, has kicked in over time. Basically, the body is sending them mixed signals, and that's created enough caution that they withdraw. And actually, I want to tell a short personal story about a time in my life when exactly this happened to me. So the setup for this story is that in the summer of 2014, I went through a really difficult breakup. I'll save you all the details, but basically it was my first significant same-sex relationship. We were involved for nearly a year when it ended, and the ending was sudden, painful, and really confusing. And of course, now with the training and perspective I have as a coach, I understand a lot of the deeper layers of what was going on. But at the time, 26-year-old me was stuck in this honestly confounding breakup where trusting this person had led to literally the most emotionally scarring experience of my life. My nervous system had learned that even if you like someone and he in many ways likes you back, even if you shared many positive experiences together, it can still suddenly fall apart in ways that are confusing, wounding, and just didn't make sense. And so it's true for various reasons that maybe I'll cover in a future episode, that for gay men, our first relationships often are especially turbulent and wounding, but this relationship left scars. It deeply affected my level of trust in other gay men, in my own worth, and in other people in general. So then the next summer I took a solo trip to the Dominican Republic. I was living in New York at the time and do a lot of solo travel. And so one day I'm on Tinder in my apartment in Santo Domingo and ended up going for a drink with a really nice guy named Luis. My Spanish was pretty basic at the time and his English wasn't great either, but we ended up having some really great conversations and just really clicked. I was about to go to a small beach town for a few days, but I'll be back in Santo Domingo for one night afterwards and said I'd love to hang out again. So I go away for a few days and we agreed to get dinner when I'm back, and I'm really looking forward to it. He picks me up and we're at dinner, and he mentions some guy he sort of knew had posted one of my Tinder photos on Facebook, was bragging to everyone that we'd had sex, but we hadn't even met. I think Luis was a bit suspicious. We didn't know each other super well at this point, obviously, so he just wanted to be sure that when I'd said I hadn't met anyone else, that I wasn't lying to him. But then, and this was the thing, I had this huge emotional reaction to this, partly to the questioning that I felt like I was on the defensive here for no reason, for no fault of my own, and partly out of frustration of the immaturity or insecurity of this other guy on Facebook. And so I went into this really extreme defensive mode and really just shut down on Luis. I felt emotionally overwhelmed and in danger. Part of me wanted to storm out of the dinner and get a taxi home, but I obviously knew that seemed like a huge overreaction, which wasn't characteristic for me at all. But I was also having a great time seeing Luis again, and I didn't want to leave even while this internal emotional reaction was going on. Luckily, Luis knew how to handle it softly and was patient and understanding with me. After dinner, he said he wanted to show me one of his favorite spots in the city, a pier overlooking the sea, and I said sure, but we're still kind of stuck in this don't get too close mode, this kind of push-pull. And that's really why I bring this whole story up. What I felt and how I acted that evening was not about Luis or even really the guy who lied about meeting me on Facebook. What I know now is that I was triggered by an honestly minor situation where my nervous system picked up on the lies and immaturity of this other guy and told me I was in danger of getting really hurt again. In short, my nervous system was really responding to something else just because what had happened had some minor details in common with a painful past experience. And one reason I tell this story is that actually Luis is one of the kindest and most supportive people I've ever met. We still speak occasionally and I still really value his friendship. But more than that, looking back, he was one of the first gay men I met who really showed me what genuine warmth and care should look like in this community. And if I just listened to my nervous system's overreaction, I would have completely pushed him away. So if you've had a similar experience from either side, either a small event caused an outsized reaction in you, or it felt like you were really clicking with someone, but then their behavior suddenly became very tense or dismissive, something similar might have happened. And so all of that said, what do we do about this? Because if our nervous systems can be shaped by past danger or pain, they can also be reshaped by present safety. So how can we recognize when we might be pushing away the love and connection we want, and what can we do to stay open to it in future? First of all, recognizing the reality of this is a huge first step. Acknowledging that most of us carry the pain of rejection and marginalization in some ways is huge. Simply existing as queer people in a world not built for us will leave us questioning when and where we can be safely ourselves and who we can and can't trust. And then from there, we want to look out for specific times we might be pushing people away who could be good for us. So yeah, I'm not talking about rejecting or distancing ourselves from someone who isn't a good fit for us or who isn't aligned with us. I'm talking about noticing when we're pushing away people who could be a great friend or partner out of fear or self-protection. So really this is about asking yourself, is this person safe, or just is this person safe enough to give them a shot? And if you feel an urge to keep someone at a distance, why is that? Have they specifically done anything to show they're not safe? They might have done. Or might you be responding more to past hurt or rejection? Second, it's worth looking for the signs that this is a stronger emotional reaction than is truly warranted in any given situation. That usually means we're responding to something more than just what's in front of us. In fact, 4 common ways we tend to react when our nervous system is activated in these ways are known as the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. In dating, fight might look like getting angry, blaming others, or lashing out when you feel rejected or scared. Flight might look like ghosting, avoiding, jumping from person to person to avoid getting too close to anyone. Freeze might look like feeling numb or dissociated during dates or sex, ignoring your needs or struggling to express them, or just feeling completely unmotivated or helpless in dating. Fawn might look like relying on people pleasing or abandoning your own needs to keep someone because you fear losing them or what losing them might say about you. And listen, there are legitimate reasons to do some of these things. There are times when it's necessary to yell or withdraw or anything like that. The key here is recognizing when the response is overblown for the situation or means you're acting in a way that ultimately isn't helping you get what you want, like if it leads you to push away the kind of love you truly want to let in. And actually, one incredibly powerful thing you'll get from coaching or therapy is self-awareness around any common patterns here. A good coach or therapist will help you recognize if you're regularly pushing people away, and if so, why, and what you could do differently in the future. And then the third thing to know is that building trust and safe relationships ultimately will teach your nervous system that you are safe or can be safe around the right people. This is a crucial detail here. Healing just doesn't happen over time or just by understanding intellectually what's going on. You have to actively teach your nervous system a new reality. That is, you have to let it experience steady and safe relationships to quote unquote rewire it. And what does that emotional safety look like? It means being around people who are dependable and consistent, not erratic or unreliable. It means being around people who listen to you without jumping in to judge or fix you. And it means being around people who accept you as you are. So sure, I know those people can be hard to find in this community. And if you're wary about letting romantic love in, there's obviously a bit of a catch-22 here. A stable romantic relationship will teach you what safe love feels like. But if you're used to keeping people at a distance because you're wary of letting love in, that can't happen. But the good news is that this safety can come from all kinds of sources, including close friendships. Another reason why genuinely supportive friendships are life-changing for a lot of queer people. As a coach, I'll also add that this is one of the other major benefits of coaching, therapy, or joining the right support group. You're obviously not dating your coach or therapist or their close friend, but being in an environment where you can be unconditionally accepted and can unconditionally be yourself really does model what emotional safety feels like to your nervous system, which helps you to open up more outside of your sessions. And then finally, one thing to remember is that when it comes to love in any loving relationship, there is no love and connection without some risk. Loving someone is an act of vulnerability. To feel love, we have to make ourselves vulnerable to someone. We have to give them the power to lift us up or to hurt us. So yeah, that's why it's important to be strategic about who we give that power to. But it's also why there's no way you can entirely avoid hurt and heartbreak in love. Opening ourselves up more fully to love does mean we're still going to get hurt sometimes, but a grounded and secure approach to love says I'm willing to take chances, and if I get rejected or things don't work out, I know I'll be okay. And I know, as queer people, it can be extra hard to trust that, but that's exactly why we have to learn to identify and process any baggage we might be carrying from painful relationship experiences or just from growing up queer in a world that wasn't built for us. We have to remember that avoiding all risk in love means we'll stay safe, yes, but we'll also never build anything meaningful with anyone. We have to accept that without risk, there can be no love. So yeah, if what I've talked about today really spoke to you, you're not alone. Many queer people, and often queer men especially, find themselves being wary about letting love in at least some of the time. And of course, that's not our fault. It's a result of growing up in a world not built for us, where we have relatively few emotionally safe models for love, and our nervous systems are just trying to keep us safe. But if what I've talked about resonated with you, again, we don't have to keep love at arm's length forever. We can start to recognize the ways we're avoiding or dismissing love and learn how to let more of it in. Sometimes that just means making small steps towards letting other people in, which does make a big difference over time. And you know, when I think back to how emotionally guarded and well wounded I was in 2015 when I met Luis, and through a mix of personal development work and a handful of strong and safe relationships since then, I'm now, if I can say so, one of the most open-hearted and open to connection people I know. So healing and growth are always possible. So there are a few things to think about. If what I've said here really spoke to you, have a think about what specifically might be going on for you. Are there any ways your instincts to armor up or self-protect are also cutting you off from finding more genuine connections? And are there any specific experiences that might have left their mark on what you believe about love and connection in our community? Because identifying and reframing those is often the key to healing the past so we can move forward in the present and future. So as usual, thanks for listening. And as usual, if you want to know more about working with me one-to-one, just head to bettergaydating.com where you can sign up for a free discovery call. What I've talked about today is a very common theme in my coaching work. So if what I've said spoke to you and you're ready to do some work to unpack this for you or process and reframe some experience that might have taught you to stay guarded in love, I'd love to help. As gay and bi men, genuine connection is often just on the other side of healing this baggage that was never ours to carry. And of course, if you think what I've covered in this episode will really help someone else in their relationships, please let them know about it. Otherwise, have a great week and I'll see you next time.